Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, as are the NBA and NHL playoffs. There are so many ways to get in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball to the NBA, the NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. Today, I'm joined by Dalton Wasserman of Pro Football Focus to talk about Penn State football in 2025. Dalton, already there's these projections out there for Penn State this coming season that scare the hell out of me as a Penn State football fan and someone who covers the team. A lot of outlets saying, oh, post-spring, Penn State's the number one team in the country. So that type of speculation always worries me, as like the hype being too big. Is it real? All those sorts of things. But, it's interesting coming out of the spring portal window and all the random spring practices that we had. What's your general feeling of Penn State and its place within college football?
So I wouldn't personally have them number one, but I would almost certainly, I believe we had them in the top 5 when we did our offseason rankings. And look, you just look at the amount that they're bringing back, basically everything besides Abdul Carter and Kobe King and Kevin Winston, who didn't play last year. So, obviously a new group of wide receivers in there, and that's going to be an X factor as far as their national championship hopes. But I could see a case for them right now being the number one team in the Big Ten, with as much as Ohio State has to replace. Oregon's going to have another new quarterback in there this year with Dante Moore. Obviously, Michigan's still building on offense. I could see that case for them being the best team in the Big Ten. I'd be a little hesitant to make them number one in the country, but I would say they're certainly top 5 or 6.
I'm sure you're going to be talking about it a lot on the Pro Football Focus college football show on Pro Football Focus's YouTube channel with Max Chadwick. Had Max on the show here in the past. You two do phenomenal work for Pro Football Focus. I want to start off with Drew Allar, because he feels like maybe the most polarizing quarterback in college football going into 2025. Depending on who you talk to, he's either the worst or he could be the number one overall draft pick in 2026. Where do you land on Allar?
So he's a top 10 quarterback in the country. And I mean, for as much as it's polarizing, and yes, there are times in big games, obviously against Ohio State or even the Notre Dame game in the playoffs where he didn't get it done. A lot of that was also because the lack of help on the outside, right? When Penn State plays these elite coverage teams and they have these below average wide receivers out there on the outside, you get teams, especially like Notre Dame, who was the best man coverage team in the country last year. They're just not afraid. Eventually, when you get to the top flight opponents, you need those weapons that can really threaten teams and win one-on-one, right? We see it with Ohio State and their receivers. We've seen it with Oregon and their receivers, Texas, all these teams. They have dynamic receivers, these teams that get to the very end of the line here. So I think it's just really that. It's a matchup thing when you get against those top teams. But as far as Allar goes, look, he's a top 10 quarterback in the country. I believe we had him in the top 5. It was number 3 or 4 that we had him. And he's just, you know what you're getting out of him. He's very, very good at protecting the football. 2023, a 1.1% turnover-worthy play rate for us, which was an elite number. Last year, 2.1%, which was still a top 20 mark in the country, even though he got more aggressive in Andy Kotelnicki's offense. So he's somebody, look, he has his flaws. The ball placement isn't perfect yet, and that's all going to get broken down with his NFL chances next spring. But really good at throwing, striking down the middle of the field, really comfortable in Andy Kotelnicki's offense. And the one thing I think I see with Allar is when he does throw it just with conviction, right? I think there's too many times where he has such a big arm and he's trying to place the ball and he thinks he has all these expectations and has to be perfect. Don't try to be perfect. Just let it rip, right? Because the throws where he does that, he looks like an excellent quarterback, a top 5, top 3 quarterback. There's just also those moments where it looks like he's trying to place it. He's trying to be tentative. So I think year 2 in Andy Kotelnicki's offense is going to do some real good things for him. It's just going to be a matter of adjusting, throwing to the outside a little more without Tyler Warren.
So to the points you were just saying, you get Andy Kotelnicki back for another year as the offensive coordinator, and he was someone who flirted with the West Virginia head coaching job. I'd be shocked if you had Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State beyond 2025. So you have that familiarity going into this season for quarterback Drew Allar. However, the wide receiver room, plenty of turnover. Only 3 receivers that caught passes last season are back. Some might say that's a good thing, but there's still this development process that has to occur for a lot of the younger players or even some veteran players that were on the roster last year in that wide receiver room. The thing that's a big question mark is your top 3 wide receivers, potentially top 3, are all transfers. USC transfer Kyron Hudson. Troy transferred Devontae Ross, who apparently has done extremely well during spring practices, maybe standing out the most thus far. And you just got Trebor Pena from Syracuse in the transfer portal in the spring, but he doesn't get on campus for a minute, and he's going to have to get up to speed quickly. So are 3 transfers the answer at wide receiver for Penn State, in your opinion?
Well, they're going to have to be, because the old answers all transferred out, right? Trey Wallace and Amari Evans, right? Liam Clifford's there, but obviously I think Pena's a better football player than Clifford. They're going to have to be, and I think this is the X factor in their entire season. They won't be able to run their offense through Tyler Warren the way they did last year, as unique as he was, and obviously eventually a first-round pick to Indianapolis. But the one thing I like about those 3 guys is you have 3 different types of receivers, right? Kyron Hudson coming over from USC, big body, can go up and make contested catches. You hope he can be the red zone threat, especially for you. Devontae Ross, the speedster, obviously a lot smaller, kind of takes after the smaller receiver mold coming from Troy, like Tej Johnson did going to Oregon. You hope he can give you some of that vertical threat. And then Trevor Pena just gives you that toughness out of the slot, right? He was really good for Kyle McCord in Syracuse last year, put in a lot of good work. He's a good route runner up there. So I like that they have different types of receivers. And the one thing I've always liked about Andy Kotelnicki, whether it was last year or even during his time at Kansas, he's never had household names at wide receiver, but they always punch above their weight class. It just always feels like he finds ways to get them open, and he can get guys that you wouldn't think would produce at an elite level. They wind up doing it as a group. So, look, I think they can be the answer. I think they're going to have to be the answer. If for any reason that group of guys isn't the answer, there may be some issues in Big Ten play. Again, when you talk about trying to beat teams like Oregon and winning your big games, and even a team like, say, Illinois, who plays a lot of man-to-man coverage, right? That could be an issue. If you can't get the ball to the outside effectively against man coverage, these teams are going to find out and they're going to go to it. So that's really the X factor that you're talking about with those 3 guys.
Those acquisitions in the transfer portal, obviously a beleaguered wide receiver room from 2025. Did that indicate to you that Penn State is all in to win a national title in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very clear that coming out of a semifinal game where their wide receivers did not catch a single pass, that if you want to beat Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, you name it, any of the elite teams in college football, you need weapons, and it can't just be one guy, and there's only so often you get a tight end like a Tyler Warren. They may not see that again, although Penn State is certainly one of the tight end used in college football, so maybe another one is coming. But you have to have weapons, and you have to have multiple weapons, and you have to be able to win vertically down the field one-on-one, because at the end of the day, these are elite athletes that you're going against come playoff time or even in the Big Ten championship, and teams are going to go, look, they can't cover us, or sorry, they can't separate from us. we're going to get press man, and we're just going to see one-on-one if they can do it. Sometimes football is not complicated, and especially when you look at that Notre Dame game, it certainly wasn't. They lined up in cover one, press man, every single play, and they won the battle. So you have to have weapons to beat the elite teams. It certainly shows that they are all in on trying to get further than they did last year.
The irony is that Drew Allar is the lightning rod, it appears, in terms of conversation for this team going into 2025. The most focus is going to be on Drew Allar and the wide receivers in the passing game. This offense is not going to be about the passing game, however. This is going to be about running the football down your throat with Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen. What do you expect that tandem to look like now in their senior season as a duo? Like, that's such a rarity now in college football.
You look at it, and it's the best running back duo in college football coming back to this year, right? I think there's a couple other good candidates. That group they have at Notre Dame is really good. The group they have at Texas A&M is really good. But these two guys both had over 1,000 yards last year, and you look at the schemes and how they both got comfortable, especially when Kaytron Allen down the stretch came back and he was healthy down the stretch and how good he looked. I like the thunder and lightning element. They're two different guys, with Allen with his vision and running between the tackles, Singleton with the size and speed, the home run ability. And you mentioned it. That's ideally how Penn State wants to play games. They want to get ahead with the run game early, really set up, move safeties, and then get into the play action game, shooting the ball down the seams with Allar making those throws, right? So I think there's a clear formula for how Penn State wants to win. And the fact that both of those backs maybe surprisingly came back is a huge benefit for Penn State, because now that they're another one. Year two in this system, as diverse as Andy Kotelnicki's offense is in the run game, you could see down the stretch where they both got really, really comfortable in it the last 4 or 5 games, and comfortable in their roles, especially with Singleton also as the receiving threat. That was a big factor late in the season. I think they're both in for a huge year. We have them as 2 of the top 6 running backs in college football. It's the best pair of running backs in college football, behind a line, an offensive line. I think that's returning. Are they returning all 5 starters? Is that right?
4 out of 5.
Yeah, 4 of the 5 starters on an offensive line that I thought the second half of the year, especially after the Ohio State game, really started to gel down the stretch in those schemes as well. So I think year 2 of this offense in the run game is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
That's the intriguing thing. I'm glad you brought up the offensive line, because Sal Wormley, right guard, is off to the National Football League, and that, according to Pro Football Focus, Vega Ioane, interior offensive lineman, is ranked in the top 10 per Pro Football Focus. I wouldn't even say that Vega Ioane was the best offensive lineman for Penn State last season. Right tackle Anthony Donko, who went down against Minnesota late in the year, was arguably Penn State's best offensive lineman. Left tackle Drew Shelton doesn't get talked about a lot. I don't think he's Olu Fashanu, but when you're not mentioning an offensive lineman, that's usually a good thing. And then Nick Dawkins returning at center, a super senior. Now it's going to be a little competition at that guard spot, but you had Nolan Rucci stepping in at right tackle when Donko went down and played extremely well. Phil Troutwine, offensive line coach, does a phenomenal job cross-training guys. So there's a chance you could bump either Donko or Rucci to that right guard spot. The young freshman Cooper Cousins is somebody who could step up. There's just a lot of depth there. So knowing what we know about this offensive line, I mean, is this going to be 60-40, 65-35 run the football for Penn State?
I think ideally, yeah, 60-40 is about where it's going to sit, because especially when they get ahead, they have no reason not to run the football and not to sit in their play action, right? I mean, I think you have so many teams around the country that they don't want to just drop back and throw the football, right? Especially getting in those obvious passing situations. So if you have the luxury of not doing it, look, there are head coaches out there that they'll run the football every play if that's how they can win ball games. And I think there's stretches of games where Andy Kotelnicki will do that too. He did it back at Kansas, where, you know what, our offensive line is in a groove. We're moving. All those guys you just mentioned, especially Rucci at right tackle, I'm excited to watch, because I thought he really came on, like you said, down the stretch. But they're going to lean on this offensive line. And if they have games where Drew Allar only throws the ball 20 times, and that's what's winning. And it's still Penn State. It's still about running the football and about defense. You just have the luxury of a top 10 quarterback, and hopefully an emerging receiving core that can complement it well. They want to use the passing game as a complementary piece first, and then there might be 1 or 2 moments during the season where Allar has to get him through it. But no, I'm excited to watch this offensive line and this run game, because Kotelnicki, and it's the creativity of it too. It's not just like there's some teams that run one play and with tempo and their offensive line is so good. The creativity of it is so much fun to watch, and he's always making adjustments. I just love watching their offense. He's one of the best play callers in the country.
There's a lot of people that love to see the aforementioned Vega Ioane come in motion and destroy somebody's life. And there are other people who are like, why are we bringing our enormous 365-pound guard in motion when he could be on the line? So that's another polarizing subject. You mentioned something really interesting there, is that Drew Allar might only have to throw the ball 20 times a game for Penn State to be successful on a regular basis. And the irony of that is that once we get to NFL draft evaluation in early 2026, that will be held against him. It's incredible, like what it takes for Penn State to win. It might not all be on Drew Allar's shoulders, but I kind of look at it as Drew Allar is going to have to step up and carry the team in select moments, a la the win at USC last year in overtime. Granted, you threw it to Tyler Warren 17 times, so you had a pretty good outcome there. You don't have that big easy button in number 44 anymore, but still, it just feels like there's going to be select instances where Allar does have to step up and be Superman and elevate the room. Do you expect that?
Absolutely. I think it's a lot like last year. You're going to get 2 or 3 moments where we judge Drew Allar for his ability to get this team through adversity. You mentioned, I think the USC game is a great example that you go back to and you go, because it wasn't, yes, Warren got a ton of targets, but what was it? The 2 big 4th down throws, both to Julian Fleming, right? Mm-hmm. Who hadn't contributed much up to that point, but he made those 2 big throws, especially, I think it was the second one I was so impressed with the pocket movement, right? Big throws to Trey Wallace. I mean, there's certain times where you just, I think, the comeback, the almost comeback in the Oregon game. Now, the interception, that was just a bad decision that ended the game. But, there's the throw everybody's on Twitter with where he was getting dragged down and throws the ball through pressure and throws the touchdown. Or I thought the Boise State game, even when Boise State was starting to come back a little bit and Allar kept making big throws. I know people go, oh, that's Boise State, but it's a darn good football team with a really good secondary. And with your wide receivers at Penn State, it's tough against good secondaries, right? And then, obviously the Notre Dame game is going to stick out for people and go, well, you can't. No, you can't draft him because of this game. But again, the obstacles that you're facing. So this year, there's going to be moments. You've got the Oregon game. You might have the Big Ten title game. You're going to have, possibly playoff games. Those moments are going to come about. And even if he doesn't win a national championship, you want to see how he gets through those adverse moments because nobody's going to question the physical talent, right? He's got a cannon for an arm. He's got the ideal size. He's got enough mobility to be a factor and be functional, right? So I don't think there's any question at this point, even if he came out this year, about Drew Allar's traits. People are just going to want to see, can he make those throws into tight windows in those big moments?
Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, the biggest question, in my opinion, is pass rush. In that you lose Abdul Carter to the New York Giants, number 3 overall. He finally picked a number, by the way. He's going to be number 51. Congratulations to Abdul on not picking a retired number. But the thing I'm looking at, and it's not really been talked about all that much, is, yes, you feel very strongly about what Denai Dennis Sutton can be returning at one of the defensive end spots. It's a big question mark at the other defensive end spot of who's going to fill in and replace that production. It might not be one single person. Also, the depth of defensive tackle isn't tremendously inspiring. You feel great about Zane Durant at defensive tackle. And then beyond that, Alonzo Ford trying to get healthy. Then it becomes a lot of underclassmen, guys who just haven't gotten the chance to perform. So are you worried about the pass rush, or is there somebody or some people within this defensive line room that you're like, these guys are going to break out?
No, I think it's a little more top heavy, but they've always got defensive linemen rolling through that are productive, right? I'm actually with the, I'll actually throw the linebackers in here along with the defensive line. The one thing I might be a little more concerned with, especially if something were to happen for Durant, is actually the run defense, right? Because you're losing, I would argue, your best run defender from last year in Kobe King there at linebacker, and now you've got Don DeLuca and Tony Rojas, who are known more as coverage guys at that spot, right? A little bit smaller. King was a 250-pound, or at least close to it, thumper, right? So I think the combination of, teams maybe running away from Durant as that primary run defense threat, I think that's going to be something that would concern me a little bit more. But also, I think we have to remember, too, Jim Knowles, the new defensive coordinator, very, very creative at times. When he feels like he can start getting the blitzes going, especially off the slot and things like that, he will stay on the gas. I was at the Ohio State-Indiana game last year, and when he found the blitz packages that worked, he just kept going to them. So I think you're going to see a lot of creativity, even if they do have a hard time outside of Dennis Sutton and Durant getting a pass rush going. But it's going to be fun to watch that, right? Some of those young kids who emerges, because on the D-line especially, it always feels like somebody does, especially off the edge for Penn State, right? I mean, it's just there's so many guys that roll through there that you feel like, okay, this is edge rusher right? Like we're not going to have a big issue here. And I think there's only a few teams, even with the talent that's there, that could cause them a big problem.
Defensive line coach Deion Barnes has done a really nice job with that room year after year after year. The interesting thing, you brought up Jim Knowles. There's a great piece recently on ESPN.com about his departure from Ohio State, him coming to Penn State, the self-scouting that's gone on, the way that he has attempted to educate Drew Allar and like, hey, here's how we beat you for a number of years. I think maybe one of the biggest storylines in college football in next season will be Saturday, November 1st, Penn State at Ohio State. And the way that Jim Knowles was ushered out awkwardly, I'll put it that, from Columbus, then returning to the shoe, and with this Penn State defense, what do you think that game is going to look like with Jim Knowles as the defensive coordinator for Penn State?
Well, on the surface, when I just think about game planning, I think it's going to look like we're going to see whatever ideas he might have in his head about trying to stop Jeremiah Smith, right? I mean, Ohio State, they're not particularly loaded. They lost so many seniors and so many draftees, right, to the NFL. And look, they still have a dynamic receiving core with Smith, with Carnell Tate. I think they're hoping Brandon Inniss can fill the role in the slot with Emeka Egbuka gone. But that's really going to be the main concern when you talk about two things. I think when every team plays Ohio State, we're going to see them play Texas week one. It's going to be about confusing whoever the new quarterback is, and a young quarterback, and Jim Knowles is really good at that with disguising his looks. And what do you do about number 4? I think that's the biggest thing. He's going to stay. He's going to lose sleep at night thinking about, look, I saw this guy already almost be the best college football, arguably the best college football receiver in his true freshman year, and now I got to go and stop him at least for the next 2 years, right? So I think that's the part that keeps you up at night is what in the world do we do about Jeremiah Smith? I think that says everything about how if you're going to beat Ohio State or not is him first. Make somebody else beat you. I think Texas almost did the job when they came in that semifinal game, and then Quinn Ewers and Jack Sawyer with the fumble and all of that. But that's what you have to do first and foremost. He's going to spend weeks on end thinking about how do I at least slow that kid down so he doesn't go for a $150, 200 and take the game over.
I want to cycle back to linebackers for a moment. What did you think about Penn State getting Amari Campbell, the linebacker from UNC, in the transfer portal?
I think it's someone, if he is someone that can help them on early downs in run defense, I think it would be a big, big factor in making that in keeping, I should say, that linebacker core an elite unit, right? Last year for us, a 74.5 run defense grade, which is really solid. That's above average, right? When you get down in the low 60s, it's kind of like traffic cone neutral, but a 74.5 is solid. If he can play the Kobe King role, where on early downs, he's really an ace and he's just diagnosing things in the run game, especially in the Big Ten, right? With so many teams running heavy. You know, I think about, I don't remember which ones are on Penn State's schedule, but Illinois and Iowa and Minnesota, Wisconsin, all these teams that want to run on early downs, you need to be able to stop that and have that one guy. So I think actually he's an excellent complement to Rojas and DeLuca, because look, Penn State, every year this is the case. Obviously last year with Carter and this year with Dennis Sutton and all the pass rush and blitzes and Jim Knowles. Every year, they're one of the most dangerous defenses in the country when you get teams in obvious passing situations. And I think something that's going to be unique for them this year, and they used them rotationally last year, but to have Rojas and DeLuca, two of the best coverage linebackers in the country, both back there on the field, it makes an offense's life really difficult because generally against any other team, you're going, okay, we got to attack the linebackers. That's what so many offenses are designed to do these days. But with these two guys, you can't necessarily do that. We saw it even in the SMU game where those two guys turned the game completely upside down, right? Covering over the middle of the field. So I think it's a big factor. If Campbell can just come in and play early downs and be reliable in run defense, I think it'd be a fantastic complement to the other two.
Not to mention 6.5 sacks last year. So does Penn State utilize him in that pass rush that we talked about a little bit earlier on? Who's that other defensive end opposite Dennis Sutton? Not saying that's going to be Amari Campbell's entire lot in life, but knowing that he can produce at the ACC level, doing those sorts of things, will that translate at Penn State? I want to wrap up on the defensive backs for Penn State. You know, you lose Jalen Kimber, Jalen Reed, and KJ Winston, who was banged up last season, but still a tremendous top end potential. So it feels like the room, there's been some subtraction, but this still feels like a really good secondary. I would say, maybe not as many A's across the board, but a lot of B pluses, that sort of thing. You guys think the world of AJ Harris, the transfer from Georgia. How does this defensive back room grade out? And to the reasons you were just saying about Jeremiah Smith, for instance, at Ohio State, you're going to deal with some talented quarterbacks. You're going to deal with some talented wide receiver rooms this year.
Yeah, no, I think it's solid. You're obviously talking about replacing Reed, and Winston didn't play much back there at safety. But one of the big guys I think you talk about is Zachy Wheatley, who was their fourth highest graded defender last year, right behind AJ Harris in the third spot, both grading in the high 70s. Obviously, you mentioned Harris. We believe he could possibly be a first-round pick in next year's draft if he has another year like last year. But Wheatley getting all that experience with Winston out is now going to be the blessing in disguise with him as the leader over the middle of the field, right? Obviously, you mentioned, a couple of more inexperienced guys. Elliott Washington looks like he's going to start, but in the snaps that he played, he graded in the mid-70s also. So I think what you're looking at is you might have the one star in Harris, but what you hope for out of any secondary, it's kind of one of the mottos here at PFF, especially with the secondary, is you're as strong as your weakest link. But I don't think their weakest links are very weak, to be honest with you. I think you're talking about a unit, especially with the adjustments that Jim Knowles knows how to make with a talented secondary. It's the biggest thing that I saw last year when he was at Ohio State. Boatload of talent. Not necessarily the best corners in man-to-man, but by the time playoff time came around, he knew what to do with that defense. He made a total switch to more of a Tampa 2 kind of scheme at Ohio State. But it just shows you at any time he's willing to make the adjustments to the strengths of his players. And if he does that with the group in this secondary, with Harris, with Wheatley, with Washington maybe emerging now as a full-time starter, I really think this could be a terrific secondary. I think there was times last year with Tom Allen, there were times he felt kind of hot and cold, right? It felt like, okay, there was times where he's really got it. And there was other times I felt like, especially the Ohio State game against Chip Kelly, where he was on his heels a bit. Not a single time last year where I saw Jim Knowles was on his heels. Ohio State at no point to me lost the game because of their defense. The Oregon game was tough, but that was going to be a high-flying game. It's Oregon. They were arguably the best offense in the country. I just feel like Jim Knowles, the combination of the adjustments he can make, the packages he can throw at you both up front and in coverage, and the talent across this secondary as a unit, this could even be a better group than last year.
Dalton, really appreciate your time. When do you and Max Chadwick start really ramping up for the college football season?
So we're getting our top returning players and top returning position unit series going across May and June. And then really late June and July is when we're going to preview all 70 Power 5 teams like we did last year. We'll have written versions of that. We'll have video versions of that. Of course, obviously, Penn State is going to be a part of that. We'll have quarterback spotlights, player spotlights, general strength and weaknesses of the team, just going over everything that we need to. Key guys in the transfer portal, like you mentioned, Amari Campbell. So we're gonna have preview content going all summer as we roll towards August here. So check it out. PFF College Football Show on YouTube with myself and Max Chadwick.
Dalton, really appreciate your time. We'll see if Penn State can live up to the hype in 2025. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.